Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, Ballads tell stories about all kinds of real-life events. But after Hurricane Helene, one group of ballad singers felt some topics were still too raw.
We did avoid for a long time any songs about rivers or waters rise. I mean, it was like you think, oh, I'll sing this, and you get to about the second verse, and it's like the river's going to flood, and you're like, no, I can't, too soon.
The author of a new book on ancient Ohio credits a former grad student with introducing him to the region's mysterious earthworks.
And of course, I'd been living in Cincinnati for 15 years, and I just looked at him blankly, and I said, the what?
And the legacy of Affrilachian poet Norman Jordan includes a summer camp for teens to study their heritage.
Learning about Black history and stuff like that did amazing things. It made me realize how great our culture is.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. When Hurricane Helene tore through western North Carolina in 2024, it took lives and upended communities. A community of ballad singers lost a place where they could share their tradition. The storm set them back, but it didn't stop them. And what might have seemed lost could be restored. From Marshall, North Carolina, Sarah Malott reports.
Oh, to you the truth I'll tell.
Tonight's the monthly ballad swap at Zadie's Market, a restaurant housed in what used to be the jail here in Marshall. Out on the patio, in front of the dinner crowd, a group of 11 are sitting in a row of fold-up chairs. They're taking turns singing ballads.
I will lock you in my dungeon, your body I'll confine. If none but Jackie Fraser could ever suit your mind. Oh, could ever suit your mind.
Most of these ballads were brought to Appalachia by settlers from the British Isles. Traditionally, ballads were sung in private, among family. Over time, singers began performing them in public. Many ballads tell stories about heroes, betrayal, doomed romance, even murder. Some can even be a bit raunchy. They're called body ballads, as Donna Ray Norton explains.
Body ballads are like the dirty ballads. And I was like, are there any kids here right now? I know that there was like one that just left. I think everybody else is old enough.
After making sure the coast is clear, Norton launches into a body ballad called The Darby's Ram. The song cheekily tells the story of a very, very large ram.
The head on this ram was as big as Noah's Ark. My dog run up its nostril and turned around and barked to my little day.
Norton's an 8th-generation ballad singer from Sodom Laurel, North Carolina. She co-founded the Ballad Swap in 2023 with her cousin, renowned ballad singer Sheila K. Adams.
I've always idolized her. She just sounds like home to me.
The Ballad Swaps become an important opportunity for these singers to share their tradition with others. When Hurricane Helene tore through the mountains of western North Carolina in September of 2024, the future of the Ballad Swap became uncertain. The old Marshall Jail, the home of Zadie's Market, was left full of mud and water. For Norton, she was concerned about how the building's destruction would affect the Ballad Swap.
The ballad swap's sort of like my baby, and I was like, oh my God, we've lost this place. What if it can't come back? What if we don't have the same momentum that we had going before?
In the aftermath of Helene, amidst all the uncertainty, Norton found comfort in singing ballads.
I really leaned into the ballads more during that time as a way to connect with myself and my people.
But not every ballad was a comfort. Many of these traditional songs touch on themes of land and loss. Darcy DeWolf is a ballad singer from Marshall. She says that right after the flood, emotions were still too raw to tackle songs with those themes.
We did avoid for a long time any songs about rivers or waters rise. I mean, it was like you think, oh, I'll sing this, and you get to about the second verse, and it's like the river's going to flood, and you're like, no, I can't, too soon, I can't do this.
But with time came the desire to return to some of those ballads. Helene wasn't the first historic storm that afflicted western North Carolina. In 1916, another flood swept through the Blue Ridge Mountains, changing the course of rivers and killing around 80 people. And there was a ballad written about this storm. It's called The Flood of 1916. A few months after Helene, Sarah Elizabeth Berkey of Jackson County, North Carolina, decided to learn this song. At first, she had a hard time with it.
I resisted, like my brain resisted absorbing it and memorizing that song because the story is such a hard one.
Eventually, she did learn the song.
In the month of July, in the year 16, the most terrible storm you ever did see made its way from the ocean wide, and it struck with force on the mountainside.
The ballad singers leaned on their tradition in other ways, too. While the old Marshall Jail was being restored, the group took their show on the road. For them, it was a chance to be together doing something they loved, while also raising awareness about the storm's impact on their home. Norton says the group performed sold-out shows in places like Charleston, South Carolina, Floyd, Virginia.
Just all these different things have blown my mind. It's just been crazy.
Attendance boomed when the ballad swap returned to Marshall after being on the road. Locals showed up in droves to support Ballad Night. So did tourists and people who came to see how the town had fared since the storm. Even though it's raining tonight, the patio at Zadie's is packed. Ballad nights typically close with the group sing. Norton introduces tonight's closing song.
We're going to close out with Jerusalem Mourn. Yeah? So another fun one.
Everyone stands to join the ballad singers.
There's a Baptist preacher, you can tell him by his coat. Don't you hear Jerusalem more? He's got a bottle in his pocket that he can't hardly tote. Don't you hear Jerusalem more? Y'all can help. Don't you hear Jerusalem more? Don't you hear Jerusalem more?
Norton says surviving Helene as a community revealed the preciousness of loved ones and traditions, too.
I think it was just sort of an eye-opener for a lot of people about how special things are and how fragile everything is.
For these singers, they've only become more committed to sustaining ballad singing for future generations.
Don't you hear Jerusalem more? Don't you hear Jerusalem more? Thank God there's a song
That story was reported by Sarah Mollott for the Rural Remix, a podcast from the Center for Rural Strategies. It was produced and edited by Nicole Musgrave. Climate change has affected the seasons and made weather less predictable. And severe storms and flooding are causing damage to wildlife habitat. Kylie Frederick is a journalism student at West Virginia University and reports that protecting amphibians like frogs and salamanders can start at home.
About a dozen people walk the gravel trail at the West Virginia Botanical Garden in Morgantown. They're participating in one of Sarah Spade's amphibian walks.
It's so important for conservation also for people to fall in love with amphibians, and that's really easy to do when you're a kid and you're holding a salamander and you're interacting with them. And so
Spade is a PhD candidate and herpetologist at West Virginia University. She's been hosting these walks for the past 5 years as a chance to see, hear, and learn about amphibians found right here in the Mountain State. West Virginia is home to a variety of amphibians because of its rich forest and wetland ecosystems. The state has some of the strictest reptile and amphibian laws compared to surrounding areas. However, even with these protections, Spade says species are still at risk.
our winters have cycles of cold and warm and cold and warm. So that's actually really harmful to wood frog conservation.
Spade says climate change has greatly affected the behaviors of amphibians, such as breeding habits and habitat loss. The wood frog is one species feeling those impacts more than others.
They can't freeze and then warm up endless numbers of times. And so they will run out of that sugar within their bodies, and then whenever they freeze again, they won't have that to protect their cells and they won't wake up.
The sugar acts like a natural antifreeze in their bodies, helping wood frogs survive freezing temperatures during hibernation. But unpredictable weather is now pushing their limits, causing long-term harm. Many of West Virginia's wetlands are ephemeral pools, which are small bodies of water that don't last year-round. Because fish can't survive in them, they become safe nursery spaces for amphibians. Despite their importance, many of these pools are not protected.
Because ephemeral pools are only temporary, they're not protected under the Clean Water Act, so they don't have federal protections. We have a ton of wetlands in West Virginia that are not protected federally.
Without federal protection, amphibian habitat loss can become more severe. Kim Miller, a recent retiree, took part in the Morgantown Walk. She says she wants to do more to support the environment and make an impact for the future through advocacy.
West Virginia has just been abused throughout its history as an extractive state. It seems like our current politicians want to return to that state. I would rather them focus on preserving the beauty here and focusing more on tourism.
Miller says by protecting the environment, she's also protecting the state's future. Dr. Carrie Krieger, founder of Save the Frogs, says protection of the environment helps protect us as well. Amphibians play a key role in ecosystems by controlling insect populations and serving as both predators and prey in the food chain. They also serve as indicators of water quality and overall environmental health.
They're an integral part of the food web. Lots of animals eat and depend on frogs and other amphibians. Tadpoles are eating algae and essentially filtering the water, keeping the water clean, which lowers the price of our water if we're getting it through the municipal water supply.
That's one of the many reasons conservation efforts are becoming more urgent. Spade says conservation acts for amphibians don't have to start with experts. It can start with local residents right in their own backyard.
If like half of landowners in the U.S. or half of people with yards converted half of their space to a wilderness-like area, it's the equivalent of creating a new national park in the United States.
Simple changes to your own backyard, like leaving parts untouched, can create habitats for amphibians. Amphibian walks like the one Spade leads help people to get closer to species they might otherwise never see, hear, or understand. Spade says that connection is key to conservation.
No one's going to protect something that they don't love, and you're not going to love something that you don't understand.
For more information on amphibian conservation or ways to get involved, visit the Save the Frogs website. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Kylie Frederick in Morgantown.
Researchers have spent nearly 20 years restoring a threatened species of orchid in southern Kentucky. Those efforts were disrupted after a tornado last spring. For the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, WEKU's Lily Burris went to Mount Victory to learn about the recovery.
1 year after the London Somerset tornado, downed trees are still piled around a small wetland site just west of the Daniel Boone National Forest. Tara Littlefield is a senior botanist and ecologist with the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. She and other researchers have spent almost 20 years on an environmental restoration project in Mount Victory.
So you can see how, the wetland superficially just has different things growing in it than out there. You know, you've got a lot more sedges and then all of these ferns.
Littlefield and her team are working to bring back other plants that once thrived here on the Cumberland Plateau, specifically the white fringeless orchid.
We used to say that these were like the ghosts of Kentucky. They're like little white floating plants that you can see, looking out across the wetland.
The orchids look like wide blades of grass right now. In July and August, their white flower blooms will begin dotting the greenery, emitting a strong fragrance. But that wasn't always the case. The orchids are federally threatened. They began proliferating here again after efforts to bring them back started on the site. Littlefield says the team even published a report about their success last year, but they were soon faced with a new challenge.
2 weeks later, after we finished that and published that report, the tornado hit.
Before the tornado, the orchids competed with new growth trees that sucked up lots of water and blocked sunlight from the forest floor. Many of those trees are now downed, smothering the surrounding land. And because of that, the orchids are adjusting to new levels of shade and sunlight, creating a new battle for resources.
Right after the tornado, I took a small saw crew and we hiked through the tornado zone to try to cut up and pull some of the new trees that had fallen on the orchid populations.
Chris Barton is the founder of Green Forest Work, a nonprofit that focuses on restoring land in Appalachia that was impacted by surface mining. He originally got involved with the wetland restoration through his research as a professor at the University of Kentucky. While Littlefield's team was able to clear smaller amounts of debris, Barton's nonprofit coordinated the larger cleanup.
We created a path to each of the wetlands, and then we carefully removed trees out of the actual wetlands.
And a year later, they've made a lot of progress.
This time last year, it was like despair. It's like, oh, we did all of this work for nothing. And but now I think there's some hope and there's some intrigue on what is going to happen to this system.
Researchers with the Restoration Project plan to push forward with the hope of replicating their process in other locations. And Barton says the orchid is a key indicator of their progress.
This particular orchid species is like a keystone species to restore that community. If we can get this species to come back, then we think all the other associated species with it have an opportunity to come back as well.
For the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, I'm Lily Burris.
Coming up, a travel guide to ancient America. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the Charleston, West Virginia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Spend your summer in Charleston, where scenic trails and on-the-water adventure meet vibrant arts, culture, and local flavor in the capital city. Begin your adventure at charlestonwv.com.
Thousands of years ago, indigenous people created hundreds of earthen monuments in what is now Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Some were burial mounds. Others were curious shapes and designs whose purposes are not entirely understood. John E. Hancock is a professor of architecture and design at the University of Cincinnati, and he's spent years studying these earthworks. Recently, he published Traveler's Guide to Ancient Ohio. And if you want to visit these ancient sites, it's a good place to start. Producer Bill Lynch spoke with Hancock about the book.
When did you get interested in the idea of ancient Ohio and the mounds and those designs?
That's a good question, and it's a good story, and I think it's probably a good story for a lot of people. Have their own version of this, but in my case, I'm an architect and architectural educator, and so I was doing the history, architecture history courses here at the University of Cincinnati in the architecture school, and I was sort of specializing in the ancient cultures, the Greeks and the Romans and all that usual stuff, and I'd been doing that for about 15 years already, and along in the mid 90s somewhere, and that's when a new graduate student came into my office and he said, I want to do my thesis on the ancient earthworks of Ohio. And of course, I'd been living in Cincinnati for 15 years. And I just looked at him blankly and I said, the what? Because, like just about everybody I talked to after that, hey, I didn't know about these things. I mean, I knew Serpent Mound, but not much beyond that. And then he showed me the 19th century books with all the unbelievable drawings of all these spectacular, perfect, huge geometric enclosures up and down the Scioto River and the Miami rivers over here. I said I had no idea. So then I was off and running. I had to go find them and try to figure them out. And I had to go learn about them, which means, I had to go to archaeology conferences and so on, because those were the only people talking about them. And the only people that knew they existed practically were the archaeologists and some native people, of course, who saw them very differently, actually, than the archaeologists did. So I found that interesting, too. So then I went to work on with some teams of people making exhibits and digital publications and so forth about the earthworks, trying to make them more understandable for the public and better appreciated, to see them more clearly and to understand more different kinds of stories about them and their backgrounds and who made them and so forth. So that's how my interest started and how it began to grow from there.
There are quite a few of these things. I know, at least from my standpoint here in West Virginia, we have a couple of mounds.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the one that I think of the most. I mean, we have one that's in South Charleston, which is really just down the road from here. But
Mm-hmm.
the one that I think of the most is actually in Moundsville, which is located right across from a prison. How many of these things out there? And have we found, have they all been uncovered or discovered or found again?
Well, just speaking about mounds first, most of those come from the culture that's now called Adena, all right? And so that's about 25 to 3,000 years ago, 2,500 to 3,000 years ago. There was a map made of Ohio back in about 1914 by a guy named William Mills, and a book, and he counted 10,000 mounds in Ohio, and Kentucky and West Virginia are just as loaded up with those Adena mounds as Ohio is. So that's a lot. And William Mills also counted about 500 enclosures. So, as opposed to a mound, that means that's an earth berm that goes around, makes a space by surrounding, about 500 of those. So that was a lot. And so they were pretty well everywhere across the greater Ohio, central Ohio Valley. Of course, now there aren't that many.
Right.
And I don't cover all of them in my book.
Right.
Just cover just about all the earthworks, that is the enclosures. But I try to limit it to the most interesting of the mounds, because mounds are kind of everywhere. From a tourist point of view, they all start to kind of look alike unless there's a story that goes with it. You know what I mean?
Right. The earthworks and the designs, like the more interesting ones that we're talking about. Is there a feeling that we have discovered or found all the ones that are out there? Are there some still hidden by, I don't know, by woods? Maybe kind of hidden on the side of a hill someplace that we haven't kind of found yet.
It's not very likely that I don't think that there are any that still have a shape to them above the surface that are not known. But there are many left that are their traces under the ground, right? There are remote sensing techniques now that archaeologists use that can detect these things, even if they're not visible on the surface. And so those are still being discovered.
With your background in architecture, what surprised you about these things?
When I first encountered them, they seemed like a very strange kind of architecture to me, or landscape architecture, you could also call them, of course. I didn't know how to interpret them. I'd really never seen anything equivalent. And that was part of what inspired me to get involved and try to figure these out. I mean, how do we figure out what these things are? And as an architect, as an architectural educator, my big question was, what kind of experience are we having in these places? How are we getting human meaning out of them? Or what are our perceptual faculties? How are they struggling to come to terms with these things that are so big and so subtle and so precise all at the same time? It was a challenge to sort of figure it out and then try to figure out how to share it to help other people to see these things perhaps in a new way.
And how long did it take you to kind of assemble this?
Well, I've been working on this topic for 35 years. So, and other projects, other goals along the way, quite a few of them actually. Because I said, first of all, we were doing exhibits, some for the Park Service, some for the Ohio History Connection. We did a big website called the Ancient Ohio Trail. We sort of put the whole package together as a tourist resource. And then right after that, I got involved in the effort to put 8 of these earthworks on the World Heritage List. So I got heavily involved in that and helped with the nomination book and so forth. And then it was just about when that process was wrapping up, around 2020 or so, that I realized, I really always wanted to make a book. I really always want to make a travel guide out of this. And that was, I think, was partly because in the first half of my career, before that student came in and told me about the ancient earthworks of Ohio, first half of my career, I'd been all over Europe because that's the material I had to teach here, and using the Michelin guides and the Insight guides and all these other beautiful illustrated guidebooks. So I always thought, as soon as I was out traveling across Ohio, finding the earthworks, I realized, well, we've got a multi-layer visitor experience here with lots of other interesting things, historic towns, scenic routes, nature preserves, and so forth. This is in some ways equivalent to the Dordogne Valley in France, for example, or some other places. And so it needs to have a book, just because I like the books, So it's when we were wrapping up the World Heritage effort that I realized, after all these other projects, I'm sitting on this big archive of photographs, videos, interviews, computer graphics, site itineraries, all the rest. I really got, and I'm 70 years old, and so I guess I got to get this book out. So that was the impetus to finally do the Traveler's Guide.
To you, what's the crown jewel? What is the one place you shouldn't miss if you're going to go to any of them?
The Octagon Earthworks in Newark, Ohio.
Okay.
Not much hesitation there. And maybe this is because I'm wearing my architect hat now, and that's where you can see the grandeur and the precision and the unbelievable experience of these places. And there, it's a little tough to figure out, but it's all there, and it's well maintained, and it's just perfect. And that's also the place where you can stand in certain positions and you can realize that this is the instrument that they built 2,000 years ago, which perfectly calibrates the 18.6 year cycle of the movements of the moon in the sky. I'd say the Newark Octagon. And then right across town, also in Newark, is the Great Circle, a 1,200-foot diameter circular wall and ditch, also in very good condition, and magnificent, sort of prototypical sacred space. So those are both where I think one might get the most profound sort of spatial architectural experience of what these American Indian ancestors did 2,000 years ago.
Are you working on anything else?
Well, I got another book that came out the same month on the same topic. I was kind of central to the creation of the UNESCO World Heritage nomination for the 8 Hopewell ceremonial earthworks, of which the 2 in Newark are part of that, and the 5 of them in Ross County, Chillicothe. The national park there, manages those. And then they include, that group also includes Fort Ancient down here, just north of Cincinnati. So those are the UNESCO inscribed earthworks now. And when we finished the nomination book for UNESCO, it was a pretty substantial and very attractive big book with lots of nice big photographs and some all new maps and so forth. And everybody who saw this said, gee, how can I get a copy of that? It looked like a coffee table book, but it was really, just basically a government report according to a very stringent outline. That was the requirement of UNESCO. So a colleague and I immediately went to work to find a publisher to sort of redo it as a real coffee table book that would be appropriate for a public sale. And we convinced the Smithsonian to publish this. So that book is also out. It's called Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks from Smithsonian Books. Probably most places where they're going to be selling my traveler's guide, they're also going to have this larger, this glossy coffee table book as a companion piece, so people can buy that too.
So you can have the one for your nightstand and one to impress your guests.
Yeah, one for the coffee table and one for the glove box of the car. The travel guide is small, compact, like a good Michelin and it'll fit in your glove box. So there you go.
That was author John E. Hancock speaking with Bill Lynch. Traveler's Guide to Ancient Ohio is published by Ohio University Press. According to the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, there are more than 6,000 abandoned or orphaned natural gas wells in the state. But some advocates say that number is low. WVPB's news director Eric Douglas visited a few and had this.
Ted Bettner, senior researcher at the Ohio River Valley Institute, and Dave McMahon, the co-founder of the West Virginia Surface Owners' Rights Organization, are showing me an abandoned gas well. The sound of gunfire ruptured the cool morning air at the edge of Kanawha State Forest. Shooters were practicing at the gun range when we parked in the dirt and gravel lot. We crossed a small stream and followed a trail through the woods for about 10 minutes before McMahon pointed out a brine tank used to store salty water that comes up from the wells. Another few minutes and he showed us an abandoned well. Standing to one side, we could smell the rotten eggs odor of the hydrogen sulfide leaking from the well casing.
It was originally drilled in 1943. United Fuel Gas, the predecessor to Columbia, drilled it. And they drilled it to 4,500 feet. And they produced gas for a while. Then they came back in 1965 and drilled it deeper.
Pillar Energy owns that well. A company representative confirmed by email that they have applied to the West Virginia DEP to plug it. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that in 2021, methane emissions from natural gas and petroleum systems and from abandoned oil and natural gas wells were the source of about 1/3 of total U.S. methane emissions and about 4% of total greenhouse gas emissions.
Oil and gas form a basis for our modern public life too, and now they are part of 40% of our electricity production in the country. So this is something obviously we need as a society.
That's Bettner from the Ohio River Valley Institute. He recently produced a report on orphaned and abandoned wells in the state.
Quite fascinating to learn that we've been requiring plugged wells since 1891 or 2, I believe. But the requirement was well-seasoned wood plugs. And there was no state office to really enforce any of it.
Permitting for gas wells only began in 1929, but the first one was drilled in 1860 in what was then Virginia. The DEP declined to make anyone available for an interview for this story, but in an emailed statement said approximately 6,300 documented abandoned and orphaned wells exist statewide.
But we know from previous study that the DEP did in the 90s that the estimated number of abandoned wells, mostly wells drilled before 1929, before permitting, is over 50,000.
These wells are located throughout the state with higher concentrations in areas such as the northern panhandle and along the Ohio River Valley. About 20 minutes away stands a leaking natural gas well in the city of Dunbar. It sits within yards of a road that runs parallel to the interstate. McMahon poured some water on the wellhead, and it immediately began bubbling up with leaking methane and hydrogen sulfide. This is an orphaned well. It was drilled in 1929, and there's no viable company in charge of it. Kevin Stewart is the Director of Environmental Health at the American Lung Association. He recently discussed the 27th Annual State of the Air Report with West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
It's an air toxic. You don't want to be breathing hydrogen sulfide. And certainly methane is something that the Lung Association recognizes as a very powerful agent that exacerbates climate change.
According to the DEP, the average cost to plug an orphaned well is approximately $65,000, meaning it would cost more than $400 million to plug all the documented orphaned wells in the state. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, this is Eric Douglas in Charleston.
As the healthcare industry cuts unprofitable rural hospitals, small towns across Appalachia are paying the price. WPLN's Pierce Gentry takes us to Jellicoe, Tennessee, where the local government is struggling to reopen its only hospital.
Debbie Staniford remembers when the Jellicoe Community Hospital opened here in 1974. It was a small, 25-bed hospital with limited services, but it helped save lives in a community that otherwise faced an hour-long drive away to Knoxville.
So we need our little hospital here. There's so many sick people here, elderly people here that need a closed hospital that don't have transportation to go an hour away.
For decades, the nonprofit Adventist Health System maintained a good reputation in the community. Staniford gave birth to her daughter there. She was treated for a tumor on her back. She says it was some of the best care in the region.
I mean, even in Knoxville, the best around.
But in recent years, the hospital has become a polarizing issue for locals. It went through multiple operators, each making lofty promises, before being abruptly shut down 2 years ago. That's made it harder for Staniford and others to get the care that they need. The closure also put 300 locals out of work, including its supply manager, Benji Johnson. After the hospital shut down, he was briefly kept on as its groundskeeper. Now, he says, it's abandoned and falling apart.
They did try to keep the hospital going. They did try to keep jobs going and everything. I think their back was up against the wall, so they just turned around and decided to shut this place down.
Boa Vida Healthcare was the last operator that was able to keep the hospital afloat. Since then, no companies have managed to reopen it.
If you look, all rural hospitals is shutting down. I mean, the medical field's changing every day.
When a rural hospital closes, it disproportionately harms people with low income who often rely on government-subsidized health insurance and who may not be capable of driving hours away for care. The National Rural Health Association says at least 91 rural hospitals have closed in the last decade as they become less and less profitable. Tennessee has the most closures per capita with 9. In Jellicoe, hospital operators cited a lack of demand.
Which is ironic because there is demand.
That's Robbie O'Daniel. He's the editor of the La Follette Press, a local newspaper, and has spent years covering the Jellicoe Hospital's woes.
Practically everybody in Jellicoe wants the Jellicoe Hospital to be back, but there's just not enough people to sustain a hospital like that.
To help keep rural hospitals open, the Biden administration introduced new healthcare subsidies if they met certain criteria. Jellicoe's hospital satisfied all but one. The federal government doesn't consider the town to be rural. O'Daniel says the feds lump the 2,000-person town into the Knoxville metropolitan area.
And I think that boggles everybody's minds.
Missing the subsidy makes it tricky for the town government to attract an operator who's willing to run a hospital at a loss. Since the hospital closed its doors in 2024, there have been a few prospective companies. Each paid a few months' rent before bowing out. Jellicoe's part-time mayor, Sandy Terry, is responsible for finding a new operator. She did not agree to an interview, though she says she's sought help from U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn to make Jellicoe eligible for the federal subsidies. In the meantime, the empty Jellicoe Hospital languishes at the center of town. Some, like Debbie Staniford, hope it'll be restored to the way it was. She says she's unhappy with the mayor's handling of the situation.
And I really honestly had high hopes for the mayor. I really did, about opening the hospital and just doing different things for a town. I just really had high hopes for that. It's let me down a little bit.
In Jellicoe, I'm Pierce Gentry, WPLN News.
Affrilachian poet and playwright Norman Jordan was a prominent voice in the Black arts movement through the 1960s and 1970s. He was also one of the most published poets in the region, anthologized in at least 42 books. He died in 2015 at the age of 77. Along with his writing, Jordan left another legacy, a summer camp for teens to learn music, theater, and dance. Last summer, Folkways reporter Tracy Phillips visited the Norman Jordan African American Arts and Heritage Academy in Westover, West Virginia. Tracy brought us this story.
It's a Monday morning in July on the campus of West Virginia State University. But it's not an average Monday morning. It's day one of summer camp.
Y'all ready for this week? Word. Me too.
There's a buzz of excitement in the air. Returning campers exchange hugs and hellos. New students make nervous introductions, and orientation commences.
Welcome to the 30th Norman Jordan African American Arts and Heritage
That's Brucilla Jordan, the wife of the late Norman Jordan. Norman was a poet and prominent leader in the Black arts movement, both in West Virginia and nationwide. In 1994, he and a group of artists started this academy. When Norman passed away in 2015, Brucilla took on the role as camp director.
We have a wonderful week of activities planned for you all.
During the week-long program, campers focus on a specific artistic genre, like dance, creative writing, or theater. But it isn't just an arts camp. It's about heritage and identity.
We always start our program with a libation ceremony. And a libation ceremony is an ancient African ceremony.
Students look on, attentive and wide-eyed, as Brucilla performs the libation ceremony, pouring water into a glass jar in memory of the ancestors. She tells them to say something they are thankful for. Then everyone else will say Ashe, which means let it be.
I'm going to begin by mentioning my mother. Her name is Sarah Wiggins. Ashe.
I would like to mention my grandmother, Wanda Birch.
Ashe.
The orientation and libation ceremony kicks off a full week of classes and activities. This year, there are about 30 students, many of whom are returning campers, like Soraya Nichols. She's a freshman in high school who's been coming to the camp for 3 years now.
At first, I was really anxious to see if all my other friends were back and stuff like that. But now I'm just really excited and happy to see everybody.
Soraya's focus this week is on singing.
Miss Ely, our singing coach, she comes up with really amazing songs and makes them sound really good with all our voices together.
Like the song To Be Young, Gifted, and Black by Nina Simone, which is the inspiration for this year's theme.
You know anything about Nina Simone? What do you know about Nina Simone? Find out. That's your homework for tomorrow. Find out something about Nina Simone. Just one fact. Everybody a different fact.
Learning about prominent Black artists is a key aspect to the camp's curriculum.
Learning about these Black people and Black history and stuff like that did amazing things. It made me realize how great our culture is, and it made me feel so much prouder to be Black.
Brucilla says that's one of the main goals of camp, to foster a sense of cultural identity and self-expression.
You know, we do the camp on a teenage level because we know teenagers often they have not discovered their own talents. I believe when they identify that aspect of themselves and also the African American cultural heritage, it always gives them greater self-identity and interact, I think, in the world better.
Brucilla has witnessed that process of self-discovery firsthand.
My children attended the camp as campers, and they are all artistic. They are songwriters, musicians, organizers.
Brucilla's sons are now instructors at the camp, carrying on their father's legacy. And over the years, other families have become involved with the camp too. It's common for parents and grandparents to help out in different ways. In fact, Soraya's own father is here this week. He's a guest instructor for poetry.
We have a special guest with us today, Jimmy the Poet from the west side of Charleston, so please give him a warm welcome.
Soraya's dad, James Nichols, goes by Jimmy the Poet. Although Jimmy didn't know the Jordans before this camp, he's been inspired by Norman Jordan and his legacy.
I just think that his vision is becoming more full circle, not just for his family, his kids, but just for people like my kids and myself. So I'm very honored to be at something like this.
Today, Jimmy is leading campers through a writing exercise that he calls the forgiveness practice.
Poetry has always been an outlet for me. Freestyling has always been an outlet for me. And I thank God that I have it. So as we go through the forgiveness practice, I want you to really think about the things that you've gone through. And I want you to come up here and give me a victory speech.
The students write about a difficult situation they've had to overcome, and at the end of the class, they have the option to share their victory speech.
I get that we're poor, but can't you see so much more? I'm rich with ideas underneath my shell, but trust that I love you and I forgive you, and I'll still reach my potential as well.
Let's go.
Jimmy is passionate about sharing this experience with his daughter, Soraya.
It was important for her to come to this academy because I understand how important the arts are. I understand how important the freedom of expression is, the First Amendment is. Now that I think about it, her being in that workshop, if there's anything that I want her to understand, it would be two things. There's power in the gifting, and there's power in vulnerability.
Soraya says after 3 years of coming to camp, she's seen the impact camp has made on her life.
It's shown me a lot more social skills, helped me make new friends and family, and it's expanded my vocals, and it's changed my life.
After a full week of classes and rehearsing, it's time for the closing ceremony. Campers present slideshows of their drawings and paintings. There's theater, dance, instrumental music, and Soraya is performing with her vocal group. For the final send-off, the entire group joins together on stage where they stand hand in hand.
In closing, now let the circle all say, Harambe to all our people.
Harambe to all our people.
Hands go up. Know that we are all winners. Say that. Safe travels, everybody.
For this year, camp is over, but Soraya and other students are already planning to come back next year. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Tracy Phillips in Institute, West Virginia.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. You can find more Folkways stories at our website, wvpublic.org. In 2023, we reported on the appearance of armadillos as far north as Virginia. Now they're being found in Kentucky, which is seen as another indicator of rising temperatures in the region. For the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, LPM's Giselle Roden has more on how the species has made its way north from South America.
Deep in the heart of Bernheim Forest and Arboretum, about 25 miles south of Louisville, leaves rustle in a secluded pocket of woodlands. Natural Areas Manager Evan Patrick pushes branches aside to clear a path.
3 years ago, we were out in that section of the forest and we were kind of scouting around looking for some potential camera trapping sites for golden eagles. We found this really pronounced sinkhole.
Typically, he says these holes are fit for mammals like raccoons, moles, and sometimes bobcats or coyotes. But about 2 years ago, Patrick's team found something more peculiar.
We were really pleasantly surprised this time to see armadillo, a 9-banded armadillo.
This was the first time the species was found alive in Bernheim.
Apparently they are quite private, they spend most of their time in that sinkhole. And what we have seen is that they're really only active in the summertime.
These armadillos are about the size of a large cat. They can't store enough fat in their little bodies to hibernate in the cold, so they're constantly on the move looking for warmer areas. They're largely found in hotspots like the Deep South, Mexico, and South America. But since 1970, average temperatures in Kentucky have increased by nearly 3 degrees, with 2024 being one of the hottest years on record. This rise has brought armadillos farther north, to the Commonwealth and surrounding states like Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio.
Someone didn't pick up an armadillo and bring it to Bernheim and drop it off here. They didn't cross an ocean to get here. They are naturally expanding their range based on climate changes.
Here at Bernheim, Patrick says armadillos have soft dirt for their long claws to dig burrows and an all-you-can-eat bug buffet in caves.
Could be cave beetles, could be something like crickets, could be isopods.
Courtney Hayes is a wildlife biologist with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. She says the state's first 9-banded armadillo was found in 1986 in LaRue County and have since been documented in 63 of Kentucky's 120 counties. Armadillos haven't made their way to the Appalachian Mountains yet, and Hayes says wildlife experts are still trying to piece together why.
Maybe they can't survive up in these high elevations where it gets too cold.
Interstates have allowed armadillos to travel way farther north than they should, sometimes by hitchhiking on vehicles, unbeknownst to the drivers. But crossing those highways is one of their most dangerous man-made threats. The thick bone plates that make up their outer shell should protect them. But Hayes explains that when they're frightened, they don't curl up in a ball like their three-banded cousins in South America.
What these nine-banded armadillos do that's really interesting but unfortunate for them is when they get spooked, they can jump up to 4 feet up in the air, and they make this little like whoop sound.
Hayes says armadillos don't even know they're walking into traffic.
They cannot see well at all. Like daytime, nighttime, they cannot see very well. They really rely on their sense of smell.
And these blind journeys across the U.S. may lead an armadillo to a backyard near you.
You discourage them being around, close off your deck, don't leave big brush piles or something like that for them to kind of root around in and find food.
They also carry leprosy, but Hayes says it's not a big cause for concern.
I use this advice for any wildlife. Don't go licking it. That will save you from leprosy. And also just don't touch them. There's no need. If you do, don't put your hands in your mouth, on your face. Go wash your hands. You're going to be okay.
So keep an eye out for our tiny neighbors, because they don't know where they'll end up as they explore new frontiers in a warming climate. I'm Giselle Roden in Louisville.
Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Blue Dot Sessions, Hello June, Paul Loomis, Jeff Ellis, and John Ingram. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Nicole Musgrave. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.